The governor goes on Facebook Live, and there's more fallout from that quote-unquote documentary being planned about Michael Madigan. We'll talk about it next on Capitol View. Welcome to Capitol View, the program where we talk about state government, sometimes the federal government, and how it just might affect your life. I'm Bernie Schoenburg with the State Journal-Register. It's midsummer, but the campaigns are sure heating up. Sorry about my voice. I've had Hillary's disease, and she was really cool to get back in 3 days because it's been 3 weeks for me. Anyway, with me today, Charlie Wheeler, Director of the Public Affairs Reporting Program at the University of Illinois Springfield. Before that, a long-time State House reporter for the Chicago Sun-Times. Charlie, welcome back.
Thank you, Bernie. It's always good to be here.
And Emilee Fannon is here, State House reporter for WSEC-TV. She works in Springfield. The station covers all of Central Illinois and based in Champaign. Welcome back, Emilee.
Thank you.
Okay, Facebook Live. It's a new day. The governor was on another platform last week. He spent, 20 minutes or half an hour answering 8 questions. How'd that go?
It was quite interesting. I definitely tuned in for the first 5-10 minutes, I would say. It just seemed like typical governor, answering his, talking about his reforms, perfect lingo. I think I heard some people say that he had a cheat sheet in front of him, like little note cards. So it just didn't really seem too real to me.
Not as spontaneous. He did use it to say the first question was from Tim Butler, a state representative from Springfield, saying, what are you going to do about our bicentennial?
Right, not the first question, but I met with him this week, and he told me he tuned in too, and he got his question asked. But I think it was more for I don't know, the average person who never gets their chance to ask the governor a question. We get to ask him anything most of the times when we have those press conferences, but it just was kind of a show for me when I tuned in. Charlie,
your thoughts?
Well, I didn't watch it. I'm just curious, at the very end, did he say that I'm Bruce Rauner and I approve this message?
Well, it was similar. What was interesting was, because it was Facebook Live, there were these emojis running, faces smiling or frowning running across the screen. A lot of frowns, a few smiles, and thumbs up. A lot of comments. Some were saying, keep at it, Governor, take down Madigan. And a lot of them, however, I would say the majority were negative comments, which didn't seem to get read by the governor. And I don't know exactly how that works and what he can see when he's doing this, but they certainly, the negativity that you could see in the commenters was not reflected on what he was doing. But he did say he's going to be doing this more often.
Well, but what I read from the newspaper reports, and again, I didn't watch it. Yeah. To be honest, I didn't think it was going to be any different than what in retrospect it proved to be. Here's the governor being lobbed a lot of softball questions. You mentioned the one about, what are we going to do for the bicentennial? I'm glad you asked that. I'm appointing a commission.
Yeah. Right. To replace the one that Quinn had appointed that hasn't met in a couple of years, but anyway.
So anybody who thought that this was going to be real news, where a governor or any elected official would sit there and have somebody call into, in the old days, it would have been a radio station or a TV station, and ask questions in real time and have the person respond to those questions. This was more of a staged political event. The platform happened to be Facebook, but it was hardly spontaneous from what I've read.
As I watched, I actually thought maybe a lot of people are getting to know how frustrating it is sometimes to be a reporter with the governor at a press conference, trying to get him to answer a question and not filibuster and give his talking points.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was that kind of thing. Well, speaking of media, I know it was discussed on the show last week, but the Illinois Policy Institute, which is one of the governor, I suppose one of his favorite organizations.
Best friends.
Or they certainly seem to support a lot of things he does. And he, in the past, before he ran, gave them like $625,000 over a few years. But they are have promised a 60-minute film or video on Michael Madigan to show kind of all the connections. And, basically it looks like from the 2-minute trailer they put out how terrible it is. But we've had some other developments. Rich Miller of Capitol Facts, which is a well-known political newsletter and blog in Springfield, said that when he did the interview for this thing, he was asked to do it by producers from Texas, and he was never told the Illinois Policy Institute was involved, and he wouldn't have done it if he did. John Cass, a columnist with the Chicago Tribune, who has been quite critical of Speaker Madigan, actually wrote in the newspaper this last week an apology saying, I knew the Policy Institute was involved, but the Chicago Tribune is an independent newspaper and I shouldn't have done this. Scott Stantis is a cartoonist, editorial cartoonist for the Tribune, and he also wrote to Rich Miller saying, I didn't know it was the Policy Institute either when they interviewed me. So it looked, and then the Policy Institute was insisting, they were telling people, and yet the head of a group called Emergent, the video production company in Texas, told me that, well, our producers weren't told that the Policy Institute was funding it, so of course they wouldn't have told Rich Miller, which made Rich Miller's statements that he hadn't been told look correct, yeah. And the Policy Institute saying, well, of course we told him, someone named Diana Rickard there, that put great doubt in her statement.
Yeah.
So what do we think of this kind of media thing happening, Charlie?
Looking at the Policy Institute's record, the relationship with the Rauner administration, where they stand, I don't think it's going to be the kind of objective look that you get, for example, if, I don't know, your station did a documentary on some news figure, or you do a profile in the SGR of some news figure. I'm sure the stuff that they take out of the interviews will be cut and packaged in such a way to go along with what the Policy Institute and the governor's position is, that Michael Madigan is to blame for everything that's gone wrong in the state of Illinois from the time Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. And he's also responsible for most of the problems of the world since the Great Flood. So obviously that's hyperbole. But this is the consistent theme that the governor has, is it's all Mike Madigan's fault. And I think that's nonsense, but on the other hand, I'm sure a lot of people believe it because they've not been fortunate enough or had the ill luck of having to watch this stuff as closely as I have for the last, well, longer than I care to admit, but going back to
50-ish.
Yeah, Mike Madigan as being a delegate at the Constitutional Convention in 1970, which is when I first met him and saw him as an elected official.
In the meantime, as all of this kind of publicity, and the governor speaks about the Democratic machine, a lot of Democrats are using, in downstate House and Senate races, they're with the Chicago machine, and you have to be for us, not the Chicago machine, which is pretty funny. And Governor Rauner has now given, by the last I saw, I believe it's more than $20 million to the Republican Party effort on this through either his campaign fund or himself. Emilee,
and everybody else has given like a million, right?
Right. He has given. He's kind of holding up the Republican Party, at least financially, this year. How's that affecting things around? Well,
back to the documentary point.
Yeah.
I mean, as a reporter, you usually have to, balance out a story, see both sides. And when I watched the trailer, I mean, it's one person, one to blame. And so what I feel like how this documentary, whenever it comes out, they are going to take snippets from, Rich Miller and other people who are involved to make it, all the blame on Madigan.
To bolster the case.
I don't see it as, I'm going to go see it because I'm interested, but we all know what it's going to be about. We all know it's going to be the same finger pointing that we've been hearing for the past
when I've
years.
written a couple of columns about this now, and my response the first time when I was asking some specific questions was basically from Diana Rickard of the Policy Institute, thank you for promoting our video, instead of, did you do this, did you not inform people, what do you say to that? Thanks for promoting it, because, sometimes...
Well, it's another way to get the message out.
It is. By the way, so we talk about the governor and his support for the party. He has called himself the head of the Republican Party in Illinois, even though technically Tim Schneider from the suburbs is the chairman of the party, but the governor clearly is kind of running things these days. But he still, while he has said in the past that he will vote for the whole ticket, or we should support the whole Republican ticket, he will not say in public that he will vote for Donald Trump. Again, this last week, he was in Springfield. I asked the question, he just laughs and says, I'm not talking about the presidential race. What do we think of that? That's good politics?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I suppose it's good politics because Trump doesn't poll very well in Illinois. He's not the favorite candidate in Illinois. All the polls show Hillary Clinton leading Donald Trump. The governor has his own problems, and the polls don't show him enjoying a wide range of support and people clapping and applauding for his performance so far. So he's trying to make an impact where he can, I think. Him being for Trump or against Trump isn't going to move the needle for Donald Trump one way or the other.
Right, because Illinois is
and what's in it for Trump, or I'm sorry, what's in it for Rauner, what's in it for the state? On the other hand, by, in essence, opening his wallet and saying to local Republicans, whatever you need to be able to defeat some incumbent Democrats in the legislature, there could be a payoff for him there. If he reduces the Democratic majorities, that will perhaps, in his mind and the mind of others, require Speaker Madigan to budge from his position and meet Rauner halfway on some of this turnaround agenda stuff.
Do any of us think that there's going to be a significant change in the numbers in our General Assembly as we are, like less than 50 days out from the election?
I'll make a prediction. I bet anybody $1 million that when the votes are counted, John Cullerton will still have a majority in the Senate. Mm-hmm. And the reason that's a pretty safe bet is because the Republican Party has not fielded enough candidates for the Senate, so that even if every Republican on the ballot for the Senate won, Cullerton will still have 30 out of the 59.
Right.
And of course, you'll take me up on
that.
Right.
And Mike Madigan, right now there's 71 Democrats out of 118. And even if he loses some seats, he'll still be the speaker as well.
Be a majority. And there are some Republicans who are kind of on the bubble too. I think Dwight Kay in the Metro East area is maybe sweating a little bit. There's a strong union presence down there. They're working against him because he's firmly behind the governor's turnaround agenda, including all the anti-union stuff. They're looking at Terry Bryant down in Southern Illinois for the same reason. So it's not that every Republican is guaranteed a win. They have to play some defense on some of their incumbents. Now, obviously, the Democrats have to play a lot more defense because they have
a lot of money. It's already being spent in television commercials.
Almost twice as many incumbents.
One of the governor's chief allies who was in the House was Ron Sandak from up north, one of the suburbs, and he resigned a while ago. We didn't exactly know why. He said his computer system had been hacked, and it happened a little while ago, but I think it happened like a Friday after the last show was taped, so talking about it today. It turns out that apparently the police reports came out, and he put out a statement saying that he had had an inappropriate conversation with a woman in the Philippines, and then he was being extorted for money, and he made a payment or two, went to the police, shut down all of his, he's a married guy with kids, went to the police, got rid of all his social media accounts and quit the legislature. So, the governor's not talking about it, and, they've appointed another Republican to take his place. Just kind of one of those stories about an odd thing that happens with the legislature, because he was a very prominent legislator, because he was kind of the floor leader and, not the leader of the whole side of Republicans in the House. That's Jim Durkin, but there's always somebody designated to do most of the arguing on the floor. And Ron Sandak was vociferously arguing that the Democrats were being unfair in the way they were proposing bills or doing this and that to the governor, and he was very supportive of the governor. And now he's gone.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting who's going to replace him. When the story did break, I talked to a few lawmakers, and most of them had the same remarks. It's going to be hard to replace someone like that. But I also did stories before where it's like another one bites the dust. All these people are resigning, but most of these people had a reason. So, when I was talking amongst other reporters, we felt this is a little iffy. A man like in that power doesn't just resign suddenly and delete all social media accounts. So I don't want to say I saw it coming, but I think everyone kind of had that in the back of their head.
Well, I think initially when the police reports came out,
and they were, and
you
couldn't read
all
anything.
Of it was blacked out.
You couldn't read anything.
And then after they finished the investigation, they released more details. So,
I think an important point to make here, though, is that whatever Ron Sandak did, it did not affect the public trust.
Right, and he mentioned that it was not on state computers,
and it didn't involve his hand in the state's cookie jar.
Right,
it was a personal mistake, and I can see how that could happen to someone.
Right. He allowed someone to be a Facebook friend when he should not have.
I'm on
and
Facebook.
They had a conversation later.
Not all that often. I probably use Facebook less than 90% of the American public. When I am on, occasionally I'll get a request, and it's some very attractive looking woman say, "Oh, I want to be your friend," and your initial reverting to teenage years reaction is, "Oh, here's this good looking girl and she wants to be my friend." And then your brain kicks in and say, "Wait a second, here I am, I'm a senior citizen, I'm balding, I'm overweight, and this good looking woman wants to be my friend.
Do not sell yourself short, Charlie."
Come on now.
And so you delete it. Just as I get these requests from widows of Nigerian dictators who have $5 million that they're willing to share with me if I just give all the information they can access my bank account. And I've always turned down that opportunity to be rich too.
A smart man. We were talking about the election in general. Does anybody think that there will be more of a compromise on the budget after the election? The governor keeps saying, I think people will be willing, Democrats will be willing to work with me, give me some of my turnaround agenda. Again, whatever the numbers are, do we think we're going to see like a real budget during the run or 4 years?
I don't think so. I don't. Not before the new year. Only because I believe the last press conference I was at, hey, have you had any meetings? Have there been any leader meetings?
Right.
They've had all this time.
Yeah, even after that though. I mean, the governor said, I will not approve like any kind of tax increase without reform, which is what he has said solidly.
Right.
And some of those reforms are things the Democrats have said they won't do, like erode collective bargaining rights at the local level at least. Will any of that change?
Man. I would certainly hope so, because while we have this standoff, the governor and Democratic leadership, principally Mike Madigan, and to a lesser extent John Cullerton, the state is suffering. There's no doubt about that. And the longer we delay, the worse it gets. And the governor is the governor. It's his job to govern. And the legislature, their responsibility on budget matters is to respond to the governor and finally authorize the spending. And so that needs to be done. The difficulty is that the personal emotions of Rauner and Madigan seem to be wrapped up in it. And unless they can set that aside and say, okay, we'll basically agree to disagree on all this stuff. Here's a narrow path forward we both can agree on that will save the state from this terrible circumstance. The difficulty with this campaign season is that the Republican message at the legislative level is that Mike Madigan is Darth Vader and he supports the Democrat. So therefore, don't vote for the Democrat. It's very personal. It makes it a lot harder if you've been openly insulting the person with whom you have to deal, then when it's over to say, oh, I didn't really mean that. It was all showbiz.
Yeah, and it's gotten pretty personal in that way because, like,
we haven't had that in the past. We've had arguments
one of the Republican
on policy.
Yeah, one of the Republican advertisements up north was attacking Mike Madigan for his business as a lawyer, lowering people's property taxes and making it look like it is, a corrupt thing to help people lower their property taxes because then you have to pay more, even though Republicans do that too. In fact, the state representative they were trying to help had done that too on some building he owns. But the Republicans are so against Madigan that they make it look like that's crooked, and that's the kind of thing that is an insult to integrity beyond politics.
Yeah.
I could think we are probably going to see the same thing that happened this summer, where it's, budget deadline day. They're still passing bills, not random bills. I'm sure it means to a lot of, it's going to affect different people. But, what's more important here? How long did it take them? I mean, they waited till the last week to even form a stopgap budget. If it's something like that, it's going to be down to the wire the last few hours, maybe the last few days. I don't see something big coming out of.
Well, I think the window of opportunity will be the first week of January. And the reason I say that is you'll have a lame duck legislature. You'll have people there who are retiring. You'll have people there who were defeated, and they can vote without having to worry about whether they're pleasing Mike Madigan or Bruce Rauner. After January, to be able to pass anything substantive and make it meaningful, it only requires a simple majority. Right. If you were to do it on December 31st, it would take 3/5, for example, to pass a budget. Otherwise, it wouldn't become effective until the following July 1st. And so the window of opportunity will be before the old people leave, old in the sense of the retiring 99th General Assembly, which comes to an irrevocable end when the new ones are sworn in, the second Wednesday in January. that would be the time to get it done.
Yeah, well, we'll see how that goes. Speaking of real effects of what the government does, there have been substantive bills passed. Emilee, I think you've been working on something about some changes in education rules that came through legislation. And Democrats and Republicans have agreed on some of this stuff. I think about expulsions from schools.
Expulsions, suspensions, basically lightening, like for administration, a lot of them were kind of jumping the gun, it seemed like. There was students just getting expelled for little things, big things. So lawmakers thought it'd maybe be a good idea to keep those students in the classroom instead of, when you are expelled, what are you doing? Either you're at home, you're running around, I don't know, people are in the streets.
There are alternative schools, but I haven't studied particularly where this is.
The moral of it makes sense, keep them in school, get them the help they need. If they are a problem, some superintendents are saying, let's find the root cause. Most kids aren't acting out to be funny. Some are, but maybe there's problems at home, maybe there's other things going on. On the other hand, some people weren't really all for it. Some people say if you never discipline a student, they're never going to learn, they're going to keep acting out. So overall, a lot of people think it's a win. Some parents that I talked to weren't really for it. They think, don't loosen up on
the troubled
yeah,
students.
It's actually the zero tolerance policy. That's what they removed out of schools. So a lot of schools are adjusting because it just went into effect 2 weeks ago. District 187 here in Springfield.
186?
86, excuse me. 186 did have a conference over the summer to kind of prepare for this. But it could be costly. You might have to hire more staff. So there was nothing in the bill that would pay for it. Extra, some districts we might see scrambling later on, or it's too early to tell right now.
Okay. I don't recall that the bill was particularly controversial in the sense of being heated debate on the floor when it passed.
Not on the floor. I meant when I talked to parents about.
I understand that, but the sense of the lawmakers of what they felt their constituents were interested in was to support this bill. It got pretty sizable majorities, didn't it?
Unanimous support,
Yeah.
Of course, as we know, Charlie, whenever change then happens and you see what it means, maybe you ask more questions. We'll see. We've also had some numbers come out for the state fair. There were a lot of problems with the state fair. There was a giant rain, and they have lower attendance numbers than before. I think it was under 400,000. It was closer to 350,000. And back in the George Ryan years, they used to report like 800,000 or 1 million, but then some people, questioned if the numbers were right and if they were really counting everybody or double counting everybody. So does this mean anything for the future of the state fair? They did make a lot of money, I guess, on their grandstand acts.
The grandstand did make some records, number of tickets sold. They reached just a little bit last year, or a little over 2 million. So that's kind of, when I talked to spokesperson Becky Clark for the state fair, she says that kind of really helped them out a lot. But the problem is, which they're going to have to work on, is a lot of these vendors are not coming back next year. So who knows? But when I asked her, what's going on next, they're still trying to finish up the Iowa State Fair. So once they pull all those numbers together, they're going to have some meetings and hopefully put on the next best fair next year.
We'll see what happens, Just a note, the 13th Congressional District, which goes from Champaign, Decatur, Springfield, Congressman Rodney Davis represents that. He's a Republican. It can be a split district. Mark Wickland is the Democrat from Decatur, and David Gill, who has run as a Democrat before, tried to get on the ballot as an independent, gathered 12,000 signatures, got about 4,000 of those knocked off in an initial review by the State Board of Elections, went to federal court, got back on the ballot as an independent, but then the federal appellate court in Chicago knocked him off again. So it looks like, and there's still a very slight chance that something else would happen, but ballots are now being printed, and that's only a two-person race, Rodney Davis and Mark Wickland. So on we go with that. I should mention that as people watch this show, the big anticipated political event coming up is the first Trump and Clinton debate on Monday. I know there's watch parties at places including the State Journal Register building. I think everybody's invited. What effect will that have on Illinois? Or Charlie, are we too much of a blue state to make it matter other than for general interest?
Yeah, I suspect that there won't be any great dramatic moments out of it. It won't be like Kennedy-Nixon, their first debate in Chicago way back when.
Was that 60, right?
Yeah, because they'll both be very tightly scripted, and Clinton is a lot better at being able to control her extemporaneous remarks than Trump is. So I suppose the thing to watch for in the debate is, will Donald Trump get off the script and say something outrageous? Now, since he's changed his leadership of the campaign and he's brought in people to manage him, he's been very good about using the teleprompter, staying on script, not, I guess, being the Trump of old, and instead trying to be a more polished candidate in the fashion that we're more used to seeing.
Yeah, I don't think anybody knows what Donald Trump is going to be like that day because it's been so unpredictable so far. I don't know.
Well, but I'm guessing that his handlers are hoping that he will be the polished package that we're used to seeing, and not the Donald Trump who we saw during the primaries.
Yeah, and I guess I should mention Ivanka Trump, his daughter, will be in Peoria next Wednesday for a fundraiser. The lowest ticket is $500. And when the news release came out, it said that nobody exactly knows where this will be. When you sign up, you will be told where to go. So apparently they don't want negative stuff to happen. I will say that both Rodney Davis from Taylorville, the congressman, Republican, and Darren LaHood, the congressman from Peoria, those are the two congressmen who both represent parts of Springfield, were not initially with Trump during the primaries, but are now with him. And so Congressman LaHood and also Congressman John Shimkus, who used to represent Springfield, he's from Collinsville, they are all on the letterhead of this fundraiser. So it'll be an interesting time. We'll see where it goes, and we're going to have to leave it there. Charlie Wheeler, thanks for your thoughts. Emilee Fannon, likewise to you. I'm Bernie Schoenburg. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time on Capitol View.